Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to the first tops and flops of this year, 2021. In case you are new to the channel, welcome, first of all. Happy to have you. At the end of each month, I look back at my reading of that month, and then I pick a couple of books that I thought were top reads for one reason or the other, and I picked one or two that I consider flops for one reason or the other. And as always, we start with the tops. And as always, we start the tops category with the book that I thought about the most, which was a nonfiction book, a collection of essays. Not that surprising because in terms of, that it was nonfiction, because more than half of what I read in January was actually nonfiction. And the book I picked for this category is a collection of essays by Aimé Nezukumatatil. And yes, I really rehearsed this name, Nezukumatatil, World of Wonders, first published in 2020. And the book is making the rounds on BookTube, not for a big portion also because there is this new book club, the Book Naturalists Book Club, run by Heidi from My Reading Life and Doris from All the Books. They are on Instagram and Twitter. I will leave a link to the Instagram account below. And Heidi and Doris want to encourage us to read more books about nature. So each month they pick a book that we can all read together. And for January, it was World of Wonders. The author is born in Chicago, and her family background is Malaysian, Indian, and Filipino, and she is a poet. I have never read any of her poetry, so this was my first encounter with her. And in this collection, the essays are quite short. Each essay centers around a specific plant, or whether it's a flower or a tree or an animal. And then Nezukumatatil weaves some personal history that is connected with that plant or tree or animal into the story. And it's really soothing. It's wondrous in terms of, the experience of nature. And for me in particular, because, I'm a city girl. If I can name 4 trees or recognize 4 trees, then I feel really accomplished. And this book of somebody who experienced nature from an early age on, and the way it is part of her life, really made me want to do something with that in terms of, I can't change my past, but I can do something in the future to go out more, to try to experience nature more. And I'm not going to talk to trees or anything, don't worry. But I feel that is something that I want to do in the coming months and maybe years. So that's why this book really meant a lot to me and was a book that I thought about the most. And if you are at all interested in this combination of memoir and nature writing, I can highly, highly recommend the book. Oh, and I should also add that my favorite essay in the book, World of Wonders, was an essay about the axolotl. I think it's a fascinating animal. And the story that the author, wove around it, of this sort of fake smile she puts on when people say something stupid or racist in school in the past. Yeah, but the animal, if you have never heard of this animal, it's not a fish, by the way, check him out. Fascinating. Next in the category tops is the book that surprised me the most. And that was a novel by Chantal T. Spitz, The Island of Shattered Dreams, translated from the French by Jean Anderson, published in the original in 1991 and in the French translation in 2007. And this was the first book of the Read Around the World book club that I have mentioned many times. And if you remember my goals for 2021, I want to read at least 10 of the 12 books from that book club. If you're not familiar, I leave a link to the Goodreads group down below. And the idea behind this book club run by Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventure is that we pick a book from a female author from a different country each month. So you really read your way around the world. And Island of Shattered Dreams is by a Tahitian indigenous writer. And it surprised me on various levels. It is the story about a group of people on Tahiti during the first atomic experiments. How do you call those? When they let the bomb go off to see what happens. And the clash of the French colonialists with the indigenous people, but it was very different in style. It was a combination of poetry and storytelling, and it was just very touching by not so much by the story itself, and don't get me wrong, the story is horrible, what happened to these islands, but that was not new to me, but it was more that I experienced with this book a completely different way of storytelling. I would say that was what surprised me the most, and I thought it was really a wondrous little book, and very happy that this was the first pick of the Read Around the World book club for January. Nuclear testing, that was the word. I don't know, it must be Sunday. That was the word I was looking for. And the last category in the tops, as always, is Best Nonfiction. And that was not that easy because, as I said, I read more than half of the books I read in January in nonfiction, and most, if not all of them, were really, really good. And World of Wonders could have been the best nonfiction pick as well. But thankfully, there's another category that I could put that book in. But I chose my first book of the year, a graphic biography, Red Rosa by Kate Evans, first published in 2015. And I talked about that book extensively also in one of my recent reads, the first recent reads actually that I filmed, because I loved it so much. So the book, of course, is about Rosa Luxemburg and her life. At the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, Luxemburg was an important thinker and activist, a socialist, and her life fascinates me. She as a person fascinates me, as a thinker. And this is a really, really thorough biography as a graphic novel. No, not a graphic novel, as a graphic biography. I said in my recent reads that it's quite text heavy and drawn in black and white, which I like, because as you know, if you follow me, I don't read that many graphic novels or memoirs, graphic books, and I'm more a text person, so I like the graphic art when it's text heavy, but maybe that wouldn't be for you. And it's really a good and thorough account of Rosa Luxemburg's life, and yeah, I loved it. So this was the best nonfiction I read in January. So these were my 3 picks for the top category in January. Onto the flops. And I had a really, really good first reading month in terms of there was no book that I thought was complete crap or horrible or close to DNFing or whatever. But there were a couple of disappointments, and I thought I picked 2 because they illustrate a point I want to make in this video, and that is that even an author you really love can disappoint you, at least me, can disappoint me, I should say, if the author does something that doesn't work for me more in general. And I had two of these experiences in January, and the first one was Roundhouse by Louisa Edric, which was published in 2012 and won the National Book Award in 2012. And I'm reading this, if you remember, this is a sort of yeah, I'm making this sign, but I can't find the word. It's a leftover from 2020, a project that I started in 2020, Author Spotlight, Louisa Edric, and I'm reading all her novels in publication order together with Terry from Miss Terry B. And there were too many novels to read in 1 year, so we have to carry on we carry on in 2021. There are 4 more books, and this was the first one. Anyway, long introduction. The book is about a really important topic that is not talked about enough, I would say, and that is the rape of indigenous women in the US and Canada, and the way that the criminal justice system is not dealing with those cases properly. If you are an indigenous woman living in the US or Canada, your risk of being assaulted and or raped and or killed in the process is 3 times higher than if you are a non-indigenous woman. So it's a real issue, and it's important that this issue is also dealt with in literature, I feel, but still the book didn't work for me. And one of the main reasons was that the book is told from the perspective of the son of a woman that is violently raped. So it's a child protagonist perspective, a 13-year-old boy, Joe, who tells the story. And as you might know, if you follow me, child protagonists, child narrators normally don't work for me, and it didn't work for me here. My problem with child narration is that either it's told in the voice of the child, which is not interesting to me because I think that's, boring. And mostly writers then tell it in a voice that is just not suitable for a child. So they think and talk and reflect upon things as if they were adults, which is not believable. And in this book, both happens. Edric switches between the proper voice of a 13-year-old preoccupied with things that a 13-year-old boy is preoccupied with, Star Wars and his friends and trying out alcohol and stuff like that, and the reflective voice of an adult. But there were also other things in the story that didn't quite work for me. But the main reason why I thought it was interesting is that even an author that I admire so much, and that an author who can write so incredibly well and touches me and resonates with me, it still didn't work if the author chooses to have a child protagonist. So if you read this book and if it worked for you, please let me know what you liked and why you liked it and why you thought it was good, because I'm really, really interested. And the other example of a disappointment, again, not a bad book, but a disappointment for me because I just don't gel with a genre in this case, and that is fantasy, even if it's written by Ursula Le Guin, and that is, I read the first book in the Earthsea series, A Wizard of Earthsea, first published in 1968, I think. And the writing is wonderful, and she has a way of world building that I always admire, but this really, proper traditional fantasy of a guy who discovers that he is a wizard, and then it's a coming of age sort of story and a quote unquote road movie, traveling and finding out about himself. It just bores me. It just doesn't work for me, even when it's written by an author as good as Ursula Le Guin, who I admire and whose work I really, really like. But yeah, Mel, you're right. Fantasy, in this kind of fantasy, I mean, Mel commented on my video when I talked about this book and the recent reads. And she's right. Fantasy just doesn't work for me. But I thought I'd give it a try with an author that I admire, just to see whether that would work. But no, it doesn't. So some things that really don't work for me, like a child protagonist or a specific kind of fantasy, just doesn't work. And it doesn't matter how good the author is. That is my conclusion of my January flops. Anyway, these were my tops and flops of the first month of 2021. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.